Welcome back to AI Live. I'm your host, Megan Wright, editor of the Artificial Intelligence and Intelligent Automation Network. If you've just joined us, welcome. If not, welcome back. Remember to join in the conversation today on Twitter by using the hashtag AI Live or by following us at AIIA_network. You can join in real time by also participating in our live networking rooms, which you'll find by accessing through the menu bar at the top of your screen. Our next topic is one that's set to dominate the global AI agenda in the coming year, as questions of ethics, bias, and governance bubble to the surface. So, what are the questions that organisations need to be able to answer? And who can you look to for best practice ideas? I first met Aric Dromi in Sydney last year, where he spoke at a conference about the way AI was fundamentally disrupting everything we know, forcing us not only to rethink technology, but to rethink the way we think. But Aric is not your garden variety digital philosopher. When he's not splitting his time between his role as in-house futurologist at Volvo Cars and sitting on boards at the NTT Innovation Institute and the AIIA network, Aric is building his own company. He travels the world and forces people out of their comfort zones and into new paradigms. Aric joins us today from Sweden to explore the impact of AI on our ethics, morality, trust, and education, and to ask a fundamental question. What makes us human in a reality when algorithms define most of our cognitive interactions? Please join me in welcoming to the stage Aric Dromi.
One of my favorite quotes to ridicule is the New York Times 36. A rocket will never be able to leave the Earth atmosphere. And I think through the years, it's not just with the NASA program and Elon Musk. I think one of the interesting things is China announced that into the end of 2018, end of this year, they're planning to land on the dark side of the moon and actually build farms over there for fruit and vegetables to send back to Earth. Through the years, we were fascinated by energy consumptions, and there was a big research done, if I recall correctly, on the 70s, trying to look at all creatures on the planet and which one of them has the best energy being, and the condor came first, and through the years the condor, with his 3 meters wingspan, 15 kilos, be able to fly 200 kilometers per day, held that record of being the best energy consumptions per kilometer being on the planet. And the condor held that record until 1818 when we created the bicycles, and until today the bicycle actually holds the record of the best energy consumption vehicle elements that exist on the planet. I often says that there are 7 billion people on the planet, and we know who we are, we know where we are going, we know, we have a pretty good idea of what everyone is doing today, and I particularly love the 400 million unemployed versus 400 million entrepreneurs, and we do have a very clear picture of reality today. But looking just slightly into the future, everyone likes to talk about the Y generation, and I always say, fuck the Y generations. It was my generation, at least, that fucked them up completely, because we told them, like, do whatever you want to do, be whatever you want to be, but we never told them that they need to work hard to achieve these things. And for me, the most interesting thing today is the Z generation. It's these kids that were actually born in 2010. They were born together with the Instagram, so no wonder we are looking at them as a narcissistic, generation. If you look about, if you take Netflix for example, since Netflix decided in 2013 to come up with their first in-house productions, House of Cards, until the end of 2017, Netflix became the biggest content provider the world have ever seen. They literally became bigger than all of Hollywood studio combined together. How many companies are actually able to achieve this type of steps of goals in such a short time? And the advance we have done since 2010, since the firstborn of the Z generations came to our reality, is massive. from voice interactions, from VR to AR to AI. We created a new set of reality. And it's funny to see that, most companies that I meet today, their strategies are still somewhere in an idea that started in 1980, in the 80s. I live in a small city in Sweden, and this city, the leadership of this city decided that in 2017 they're going to dig tunnels for underground. In 2017 they decided to do that. So forget about all of the technology, but the idea that brought them to dig this tunnel was somewhere in the mid 90s. They just didn't have the money to execute it, but they didn't even try to re-examine the strategies. I took my kids for vacation this last summer, and we went on a cruise on this boat, actually, the Independence on the Sea, and we went into a fantastic tour through the Mediterranean. And we stopped at Pisa, we stopped the most wonderful places in Europe. The only question my kid had before we went on the cruise was, do we actually have Wi-Fi? And it's a whole new perspective with the Z generations that we need to encounter. And with these perspectives comes set of frictions. Even so, the pictures, I chose these two pictures. One of them is older. I love this 5 years old writing, to Santa what she wants for Christmas. And I love the Amazon address. But with all of these technologies that is surrounding us, we come into new sets of frictions that companies simply are not aware of. And especially the one, this is a ticket my friend took a picture of in the Silicon Valley. And it's funny, right? Like, don't give me a ticket because my Bluetooth is gone. And people do everything today for these type of connections. There was an interesting experiment in Manchester, which 22,000 people agreed to clean public toilet because they got free Wi-Fi access. They were more curious and care more about the Wi-Fi access rather than the privacy laws of the signing to get this free Wi-Fi access. I love what Kentucky Fried Chicken did with their Faraday cage. Forget for a second the shitty fast food that they're delivering, but the idea is fantastic, which gives you a little bit of privacy. Faraday cage, for those who doesn't know, it's no electric signal can actually penetrate. So mobile phones will literally not work inside. So no digital interruptions within the Faraday cage. And through the years, we have been consuming so much information, and we outsource so much of our cognitive functions, and we are shifting from organic to inorganic perceptions of reality. Our brain is literally evolving around digital interactions, and it's amazing to see what are these interactions, how we can actually fold these interactions. This is 1 minute in the internet time frame. This is everything that we do during 1 minute. And I like the comparisons between 2016 to 2017, especially the Snapchat. 500,000 snaps were sent every minute in 2016 to almost 7 million snaps being sent in 2017. It's interesting that the App Store, for example, didn't really improve much. 51,000 apps to maybe 58,000 apps. But Snapchat is amazing. Email almost didn't change. YouTube jumped by almost 1.5 million. This is everything that we do on the internet in 1 minute. We did a funny experiment. We tried to calculate the amount of music and music art was created for human history, the recorded human history at least, and says, like, what happened if we put it on a CD? And we found out that we can take everything in human history related to music and literally put it on a 20 terabyte hard drive. Cost maybe $2,000 today, but let's be honest, 5 years it will cost maybe $60 and you can put it in your pocket. If you burn it on a CD, the pile will be 57 meters long. On the other hand, if you burn on a CDs everything that passes through the internet in 24 hours, the pile will be all the way to Mars and back. And every 18 months, we literally double the amount of digital knowledge we are creating. And, unfortunately, the only way for us to consume this knowledge is through screens. Now, I'm always laughing. A few years ago, the average age of introducing a toddler to a screen was around 4 or 5 months, 5 years old. Today is 3 to 3.5 months old when we are putting a kid in front of a screen. And screens became some kind of a gateway to our reality, if we think about it. I often look at people when we are standing in the grocery shop. There is someone in front of you, someone behind you. The obvious thing to do is to pull the phone out of your pocket and to plug yourself into reality. Look, when you're traveling in airports, look how people are actually browsing. People actually, in subways, they don't lift their head today. Hell, I'm sitting on Friday. I have 4 kids. We are sitting, me and my wife, with the kids on the sofa in the living room. The kids are only on screens today. And it's became a way to define our existence somehow. Nevertheless, we came into a place that we think that screens is how we can improve technology. And if there is a great book by Golden Krishna talking about no interface is the best interface, and his claim is quite remarkable, because we think that if we put a screen on the fridge, it's going to make the fridge better. If we're going to put a screen on the car, it's going to make the car better. In the 2012 London Olympic, one of the highlights in the commercials was like, we put screens on garbage cans in the street, and what did you get on the screen? You get the temperature. What can be the temperature in London? It's miserably raining all year round. It doesn't really make sense to continue and put screens on everything. I had a sessions with a company that they bought these new printers, which 7 screens on the printers. And my comment was, but everyone has a phone in their pocket, a smartphone that they get from the company. Why don't you just create a set of APIs to the printer? Why do you need another set of interactions? If you consider, there is actually a Pornhub on the screen on the fridge, because there are some guys in the US that actually going between different dealers, and whenever they found out that there is a screen on the fridge, they put Pornhub, because let's be honest, what are we going to do with a 17-inch screen on the fridge? It's literally not scalable, and it doesn't make sense. And then, in 2015, everyone was talking about, now VR and AR is going to take the stage, but we are hitting 2018 and we see it didn't really hit mainstream. And it's simply because it's just another screen sitting just closer to your eyes, but we are trying to copy an interactions that was intended to a flat screen and try to immerse a person in that interaction. It doesn't really make sense. It's not really an issue of technology, it's an issue of imagination. Sorry, think about, I tried, one of the first VR experiences I tried was the Netflix VR experience. I think it was on the Gear VR by Samsung. And, I sat on the in my living room, I put the helmet on, I launched the Netflix, and I see in the VR experience a flat screen TV on the wall, a living room, and a red sofa. My sofa is red, so it felt like I wasn't really immersing myself in another reality. We just, try to duplicate something that already exists, and it doesn't really add any extra value for us. I think the challenge is to break the boundaries of what exists in true and shouldn't be changed, and find a new way of interacting with this reality. Due to the fact that we are surrounding ourselves with content, and I love the idea of attention span, and humanity attention span dropped from like 20 seconds to 12 seconds to 8 seconds. And if you see kids today, the way they browse YouTube, the way they listen to music, they don't have any patience to listen to more than few seconds. Yet our brain is able to capture 11 million bytes of sensory data from the environment per second, but we can process only 14 bits per second. We are not big data machines. We are small, contextual, intentional data machines. And I think like one of the implementations of this, or the results of that, is that we stop, we are forcing these 40 bits of awareness to stop remembering facts. We don't really need to know things anymore. We need to know how to find things. And I think one of the cooler things that is happening for the past, year and a half is the birth of new set of interaction models that are actually anchored in voice. And if it's for the millions of Alexas that were sold during the last Christmas, to Siri's or Cortana attempts to Google now, we see more and more companies realizing that maybe screens and touch, they're not so scalable for the long run, and we should find new ways of interacting. Even so, it's bring its own new sets of challenges. For those who haven't seen the last season South Park first chapter, they literally abuse Alexa by just saying, Alexa, set up an alarm for 7 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of other ridiculous things. And when I just said that, by the way, my Alexa at home started to shout. I think one of the breakthrough, one of the science that I'm fascinated most about is our brain. And I think for the first time we see interesting technologies. It took us 350 years from the minute Galileo enabled us to observe the stars until we put Yuri Gagarin between the stars. But it took us only 15 years from the minute the MRI became a reality until we were able to connect the human brain to a computer. And now we are able to, just this year, last year, researchers for the first time were able to link the human brain to the internet. DARPA is planning to hack the human brain to upload new skills. A little bit of LSD involved, which is great, but we can really see a major attention being given to the human brain like never before. I like this idea of we used to work with software and hardware, and now we should start getting used to wetware, which is the brain as the next platform. And you do see, both Facebook and Elon Musk looking at the human brain as one of the platform to push forward. If it's, Facebook announced they're going to use AI to scan our thoughts to enhance our safety. I don't know what can go wrong with that, but we can really see the focus on this type of technology. And I think that's due to, to the breakthrough we had for the past few years, or at least the attentions for R&D with machine learning. And I love the idea of Putin, saying those who will, master AI will become the leaders or the ruler of the world. But there is a lot of confusion about AI today. And when you just go and ask people, what is an AI? If you just go to the typical Gartner, other institute, Gartner, McKinsey, Capgemini, what is an AI? You get a picture like that, which is bunch of technologies, bunch of contents that it's very hard for us to cope with. And in order to make it more readable, they are adding a lot of scares, 38% of US jobs are going to be automated by 2030. Foxtron is planning to replace most of the human employees with robots. And for me, and even so, I love this picture. Again, Fred from Mountain View sent me, I love the security robot patrolling while the police officers are actually sitting and browsing their social media. And you do see some of these seeds coming forward. In 2017, we had 170 less jobs in retail, while we had 75,000 more robots in Amazon. And we can see, robots already replaced 25% of humans in Chinese factories. But if we stop for a second and take a deeper, more holistic view about artificial intelligence, I think it's something much more fundamental than just technologies. Throughout history, we constantly seek to create something external for us that can justify our existence. So religion was born, and we can debate on that for hours. But, Aristo, in the end of the day, wrote one of the, basic machine learning algorithms today, which is the deductive reasoning system. Talos was one of the first AI we created during the Greek methodology. So AI is not about technology. It's much more about trust, morality, ethic. I often have these discussions with my wife, and one of the questions we started to look at last year, or almost 1.5 years ago, asking, what happened when let's say I'm working from home and you come home early and you catch me in bed with one of these robots. It actually cheated on you. You will have to ask her what was her answer. But these are the questions we will need to start asking ourselves. These are the questions of morality, trust, and ethic that these technologies is going to bring to our life. We have a bunch of brilliant scientists that are rushing to develop technology just because they can develop technology, but we don't have adult leaders to stop and actually examining the impact of these technologies on our life. I ask a bunch of fashion marketeers, how many of them are actually willing to create a fashion show for robots? And these are open questions. You know, I had a discussion with a judge in Las Vegas and ask how ready are we, the law systems, to actually deal with lawsuits with artificial intelligence? What happens if someone is hacking my digital twin avatar and manipulating it or deleting the software? Can he be charged for murder? And it's fundamental questions that right now I don't see a lot of people actually asking them. And these things are becoming reality faster than we can see. This is from Estonia. They already have these very cool robots, and I think in London I've seen them running around in London as well. We already have these cool robots that can do tasks for us. You know, China, they did these tests for robots, and they found that they qualified as doctors much better and faster than human beings. So how many are we of us are be willing to be treated by a robot doctor? You know, a doctor, to be able to cope up with everything that is happening today, needs to spend 40 hours a week just reading about new things that happen in the medicine world, while Watson can do it in milliseconds. So which one I would like to be diagnosed with? By a doctor that hasn't slept for 72 hours because he has been on shift, or by a robot that doesn't really need to sleep much? And going back, to the enterprise world, I love this picture showing the companies that, from 1917 to 2017, and we can see the shift of companies that worked with physical goods to companies that are handling mainly code. And yes, you argue that Apple is a very physical company and they're selling products, but it's a code-based organization. They run their business based on code. And I can guarantee that, most of the companies that still exist on the right side, that like Johnson & Johnson, for example, they're going to be replaced by new companies that are running themselves on code. And everything in the world today is actually based on code. And if I grew up, one of my first operating system was FreeBSD, and so I grew up in the Unix world when 10,000 lines of code, and the difference between Unix and Facebook is unbelievable. I think Facebook, this is from last year, so Facebook already passed the 70 million lines of code. Everything we do today is literally anchored in code, and Facebook versus Google, I think, straightens us a little bit better. And the world is run by code, and we perceive the world. This is basically the world map, but I claim that this is a better view of looking at the world map. And if you look at nations, Facebook today has 3.6 billion people through its own media. So it's not just Facebook, it's the Facebook and the Instagram and the WhatsApp, 3.6 billion users. It's code that is actually dominating the world today, not the traditional companies. Unfortunately, we still live in an outdated infrastructure. I often say that we are led by blind leaders who are blind to our blindness, and because of that, we are forced to sleep the biggest change in human history. One of my favorite stories about Sir Joseph William. Not many people know him. He actually designed and was responsible for the sewage system of London. When he got the job, the first thing he did, he insisted to increase the size of the pipes to 5 or 6 times of what it was originally intended, because he was smart enough and he had in long-term vision to understand how many people are actually going to live in London and the importance of London as the center of Europe at that time. If he wouldn't have done that, if they wouldn't have listened to him, London would have literally drowning in shit today. And how many of leaders surrounding us are capable of seeing so far? How many companies we are working with, how many of the CEOs we are surrounded with are able to understand the implications of technologies, not for the next 2 years, but for the next 100 years? I started to laugh that, I wrote an article a few years ago talking about the Da Vinci gap, talking about the lack of leadership today. When Steve Jobs died, when Bill Gates retired, when Larry Ellison decided to step aside, we have a gap of assholes. And I often says that Silicon Valley needs to stop being so much politically correct and start going back to becoming more asshole-ish, because only assholes change the world in the end of the day. And these changes are massive. It's like the fundamental building block of society is mobility, is communication, it's energy. But something happened. They are not standalone infrastructures anymore. They are all relying on intelligent interaction models. And while we are very good of pushing the right sides of connectivity, of layered reality, of technologies like blockchain or algorithmic intelligence, we forget that it needs to be balanced by, again, education, morality, trust, and ethic. And cities, more than anything, more than any other entity today, must think as Fortune 500. They need to move from physical borders to use code as a passport, to rethinking GDP models. Otherwise, they will simply not survive, competing against companies like Facebook, Google, and Apple. And things are becoming extremely real. Now, for the first time in history, we actually have technologies that are able us to bypass evolution. I love the idea that natural evolution actually picked. There is nowhere to go. We picked our evolutionary potential. We're not going to develop a set of eyes in the back of our heads. We're not going to grow another arm, but we do have technology that enable us to achieve things that will take millions of years if we actually let natural evolutionary work. I love the idea of the science, the advancing science of 3D prosthetic limbs. It's not just an attachment, it's literally becoming part of you. You can feel, you can harness your brain to actually run the prosthetic limb. And this is just the beginning. I followed a boy that had a prosthetic limb that is growing. It's a bone that is growing with the kid, so he needs to have less and less surgeries. And yesterday I saw a seminar, talking about that the person that is going to live for 150 years was already born. We already have. Now, I like the idea of Ray Kurzweil. If I will survive to the age of 75 and my lungs are going to collapse, I'm probably going to get a 3D printed lungs. And if 10 years after my liver is going to collapse, I will get a liver. We're not going to have a magic solutions to live on to have 150 years, but slowly we can actually, one step at a time, we will get to this destination, which brings again, right, if no one is going to die, how many people we can actually accommodate the Earth with, which goes back to Elon Musk. Maybe we should start looking at Mars as an alternative. And we have, it's not just, talking about natural evolution. We already have the first organic, it was a lamb that was born out of an artificial womb. And I worked with some design students, and the question was like, for the women in the audience, how many of you are willing to have your baby being carried and born out of an artificial womb, so your body doesn't need to go through the process? Surprisingly, more than 60% of the women in the audience raised their hands. And yes, it's a little bit more far away, but we already have FDA approval for trackable pills. And right now, it's a pill that sends a signal that the patient literally took the pill. It's for Alzheimer and dementia patient. But if we already have technology we can swallow, imagine how much more we can do with this type of pills. Unfortunately, most focus today is still on hardware. So yes, we have done, there was massive breakthrough in hardware from 2009 to 2017. If you look at the Kinect and you look at the iPhone X, we have done wonders. But, it's just a piece of hardware. There is nothing to it if there isn't interaction models, if we don't find new ways to create values. So instead of looking at hardware, I will ask more companies, why don't you look, and start to understand, why is Amazon meeting with banking regulators? What happens if Amazon is going to become a bank? How many of us are actually willing to use Amazon as a turnkey solutions for all of my interactions? And believe it or not, more and more people start to move, and we can see it with blockchain, of course, and the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency with all of the crash that happened. But we see a raising awareness and the need to develop new set of financial, educational, legislative, or governmental institutions, ones that are anchored in code rather than anchored in the old monetary system or the old value system that is literally simply not scalable for the code era. We need to ask ourselves, why is Facebook, teaching its AI human reaction by watching Skype? We can see both Amazon and Google coming into our life and taking the place of companies, just filling gaps that other companies simply missed. So if it's the Amazon that, all of I love their Amazon fashion Alexa that enable them to take a film and see who I am at every minute, from Google taking responsibility for human language. And most companies, most cities I encounter, they are still very much busy of retrofitting reality, which is not a bad thing, but you cannot retrofit reality more today, 7 to 10 years down the road. And while they're retrofitting reality, companies like Snapchat are able to come from behind and create a new perceptions of reality. So I don't know if it's Snapchat, but it's just their promise right now. Just look at their third iteration vision for their glasses, that they're completely not going to be connected to your phone. Right now you're able to take pictures, but what happened when you can create a digital signature on yourself that everyone that looks at you from their Snapchat glasses will be able to see a different, right now it's to look like a clown. But do you actually need colors? Do you need patterns of fabric? Can I actually, rent my space, the space of my car for advertisement for people that are actually using Snapchat glasses? In 10 years from now, we are going to feel naked living home with this type of devices as much as we feel naked today living home without our smartphones. And think next year, in the next 2 years, we're going to see not just glasses as Snapchat, which is okay, but we're going to see lenses that enable us to give us superhuman abilities to explore reality, to see more colors around us, to be able to enhance our experiences with new digital interactions. Now, WeChat, Facebook Messenger thinks that they are advanced, but everything Facebook did, WeChat already forgot 5 years ago. And WeChat just introduced in China, they become a digital ID provider through different type of biometric settings. And we see a change when we're moving to digital ID, and it's opening a whole new world of value exchange in a domain that is traditionally not controlled by government. I love the idea from the CEO of Shell that he says his next, next car is going to be electric. Britain ban gasoline, gasoline cars by 2040, but it's going back to a questions of infrastructure, because once we're already struggling to charge all of the electric gadgets we surrounded ourselves with. What happened when we put just in UK, 4 more million electric cars on the road? The electricity infrastructure is going to collapse. And how we are going to generate electricity for electric cars? Of course, we're going to use the traditional way of manufacturing electricity. Everyone is talking about autonomous driving cars on the road, but you need to get 75 penetration in order to have a value into that. But what happened when pedestrian decides to cross the road because he knows that the cars are simply designed to stop whenever they recognize a pedestrian? We cannot really accommodate humans and autonomous entities on the same infrastructure. And it's a question of liability and an infrastructure design more than anything else. One of our greatest capability as human being is to be able to repurpose things. I love the story about Thomas Edison, or so does the legend said, that when he created the phonograph, in his mind, it was meant to use as a religious instrument. So, you had a bad day at work, you came home and someone was shouting at you on a 20 minutes religious sermon. And then he gave that invention, that technology to humanity, and music sharing was born. And through the years, we tried to kill the music industry, and it constantly reinvented itself. And today, YouTube is one of the biggest comparison to the phonograph I can come with, because it doesn't just enable us to share music, it's enable us to recreate, co-create. And by doing that, it simply killed, owning music, downloading music. I have 4 kids, and I love the idea of I followed fake Instagram accounts. So Instagram is a fake Instagram account, and everything the kids are getting today are being repurposed in a way that it was never intended. In the background, you see it's a Vancouver driver that decided to repurpose his iPhone and iPad in a whole new way of entertainment. By the way, he got a $62 fine because he didn't have a seatbelt, not because he was using the entertainment system as such. And that movement, that repurposing, the lines of code we are surrounding ourselves with, are moving us from ownership to accessorship. My kids, they don't really own music. They're streaming it from Spotify and other services. They don't really own DVDs or any other form of physical movies. It's HBO and Hulu and it's Netflix and God knows any other service they find to stream. And it's the same with books and with toys and with art. And there is no reason to own homes today. If you see, the breakthrough. I talk to a lot of my students. We're talking about they're traveling a lot in New York and in Hong Kong, and ask them where do they stay, and they're just surf Airbnb sofas. They don't really want to own an apartment today. And talking about books, I'm reading quite a lot of books. I love this library that was introduced in China, but for the past few years, I really didn't buy any physical books. I'm using the Amazon recommendation engine on my Kindle, and I think for the past, it's already 4.5 years since I started doing that. There was only one book I didn't like for the Amazon recommendation engine, and their algorithm knows exactly what book I might like next, and I literally stopped listening to humans. Even so, people try to recommend me books, I always put them in the end of the list, because I have an algorithm that knows me so well for the last four years, and the question is, how much are we going to let algorithms to decide for us? Are we going to let it design a car? This is a car chassis that was designed by an algorithm. Surprisingly, it's more durable than any other car that was designed by human. But the fundamental question is, what does it mean to be human when our decisions are taken by someone else, by an algorithm? Amazon created this, they have this funny, they're using neuro technology to decide on the next show on TV. Sorry, not Amazon, Netflix. But how much are we going to let algorithms determine our next decision, our next stop? Am I going to be happy if I bought a smart fridge and I want to take a snack in the middle of the night, and the fridge says, no, you can't wait, I'm not going to open the door? Am I going to let an algorithm decide to automatically order flowers for my wife for our anniversary? And I think going back to ethic, morality, trust, what does it mean to be human when we are surrounding ourselves with technology? And don't get me wrong, I love technology. But if we are not going to be careful, technology is going to run over us faster than we are able to understand what is actually happening. Natural Cycle is a funny app that helps women women in Sweden use it to calculate when it's the best time in the month to have sex. they literally outsource when it's the best time to have sex without protection to an app. 37 women got pregnant and they are getting upset on that. One of my friends recommended the best way not to get pregnant is to drink orange juice if you decide to recommend an app. But this is how much we're actually outsourcing our decision and our cognitive functions to technology around us. No, and there is a big buzz about the VR kit by AR kit by Apple, and we have a bunch of technologies that enable us to enrich the way we are looking at reality. But if we stop back and stop and look back, this is a bunch of conversations I'm having with my son over messaging. It's creating a new set of languages. It's not just observing reality. It's literally helping us or pushing us to reshape our natural way of communicating with each other. Now, I think in 2014, there was a problem for most teachers in UK on the English essays. They were not able to read what the students wrote because that was the language they actually used. And while for me, this is one of the greatest implementations of 3D printing, enable blind people to see art, there are a bunch of companies that are working on technologies that enable us to literally touch digital objects. And how do you quantify that? How do you capture that? What do you put on the value? Are you able to sell a digital object that people can touch and feel? What happens if it breaks it? What happens if someone is hacking it? Are we going to let them to be able to modify it? And these technologies are going to be part of our reality in the next 7 to 10 years. And we talked about my kids before, and all of my kids, they got iPad or a Chromebook from school, and my question was, why did you give them iPads, computers? Well, because we're an advanced school system and we want your kids to have the latest technology. And I still ask, but why did you give them that? It says like, well, we have an agreement with Google and your kids have access to the Google book library. I'm like, but Google scanned 25 million books. My kids can never read 25 million books. Are you teaching them curiosity? Oh, no, crap, we haven't done that one. But we gave them iPad, so we saved you money. You should be happy. And I think we are in a ridiculous race using technology to copy ourselves. But if nothing more, we have been proven up to be a really, really fucked up creation. So why are we trying to copy ourselves and instead of letting technology to be part of who we can become? Why are we trying to use robots to replace human instead of teaming up with human in order to create the next stage of human evolution? Remember, we picked who we are today, and we cannot compete against technology. We need to use technology to define what is the next step of human evolution. And we have the computation power. This is the 50 qubit computer quantum computer from IBM, but we have the computation power to do these things today. It's not an issue of technology. More than anything, it's an issue of imagination. And this new model, we are not observing reality anymore. We are not in control. There is a model that organizes, identify, and interrupt us as part of its perceptions of reality. Somehow, for the past few years, we became screws in a machine that is already out of our control. And I think, one of the last slides or the last comments I will leave you on, it's not my quote, even so I wish it was my quote. I just love it. It's never stop trying. If you need to fart, simply fart, because otherwise you will regret forever that you didn't try. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a really interesting presentation. I'm sure you can all agree. If you've got any questions for Aric, please join us in the networking rooms for a live discussion on the moral implications of AI starting now. Otherwise, please join us back here at 4:10 p.m. GMT, that's 11:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be joined by Virtual Operations Chief Executive Nick Andrews. Don't go anywhere.